Hello folks, I've just been watching a video tonight. It's a guy who's gaining in popularity. He calls himself Daddy Dragon. Now, I've watched quite a few of his videos and I have to say I'm impressed with his energy in relation to his moving forward the Constitution as the solution. Yeah, it is. I've had it on my sites for the last 12 years. This is where we need to be, is the Constitution. What Daddy Dragon's actually done and done well is declare the time now that we all do start to differentiate between the English Constitution, which everybody's forgotten about because they all think we're living under a British Constitution. There is no British Constitution. There's only a British Empire. There's never been an English Empire, ever. Think about it. You know, this is important stuff that people start to recognise. Now, tonight on his show, he's calling for people to move forward to become police commissioners. Now, I understand exactly why he would consider that to be a way forward. And it could well be, for instance. However, what people have to understand is the way this system has been set now is to have the mayor and the police commissioner answer to the stakeholder committees. So the way they've set this up now as commissioners and mayors is all in sync with the stakeholder committees. So you'd have serious problems getting a man or woman as a police commissioner who was enforcing the common law. And I think you come into all sorts of problems because, as I've just had a quick look now on Wikipedia, for policing, etc., the history of the British policing, the one thing that's striking on every source I've looked is the omittance of the actual protocols that have run law enforcement since 1829. And I'm not joking, check for yourself. There is no mention of these anywhere. There's a reason why these aren't mentioned, and there's a reason why I first put these up in 2009 and bleated on about them, and have continued to bleat on about them ever since. Nobody seems to pick it up. So these are 1829, 9 principles of law enforcement adopted by British and Commonwealth. It says British, English. It would have been British, obviously, because we see ourselves as the British Isles, which is the oldest geographical term for them. I think we can find it back to 342 BC. But that's its geographic term. It's been Britannia under Rome province, okay, and then various titles as the franchises I've suggested gets shifted into the hands of another. But what we need to really fix too right now, because the police commissioners superseded what was the police authority, which pretty much governed policing. But even that, when you get into that, I'm going further back than that. You can see at successive points where the corporate has shifted and changed policing to serve its own. And of course they've done that because Freemasonry and the police are one and the same. Freemasonry runs the police. Now, Freemasonry, I spoke a lot about it because I know a lot about it, okay? The mystery school was teaching you a lot about that theology. So I do know a lot about it. But I've also said, and I've said this for, again, probably 20 years, that it's the Freemasons are actually being scapegoated. Because you've got to look at Freemasonry and its origins would have been the Knights Hospitallers, okay? The English Knights, the chivalric orders forming Freemasonry. So I know there's a lot, and everybody does, and I've done it myself, hunting down where the Jewish influences come in. But ultimately, the chivalric orders in this nation of England were there to protect the realm. That was the job. Now in Scotland, you've got to bear this in mind, and people don't realise this, you know. Scotland became the Templars' centre, invited in by Robert the Bruce, okay. This is under the time Edward I, the man whom, if you study in general terms, you will find nothing but scorn laid upon him. Now, the Knights Hospitallers, you have to see them as the protectors of this realm, the knights, okay? With all the regalia that were their job, it was to protect this realm in a military format. That's all been obfuscated. It's all missing from the historical context if you're searching anything to do with England. Because, of course, they don't want you to see. It's been very successful to keep us all believing we're British and that everything that was great about England was actually. But no, nothing about British and Britain has been good. It's done nothing but move pain and nonsense across the world. The fact it has its base in England, in London, is the tie and how England's got wrapped up with this. Britain doesn't have a constitution, but England does. Scotland has its own. Wales doesn't because it's part of England, regardless of how much they cry their eyeballs out over there. Wales is England. England is Wales. Okay, you've been given this identity to separate yourself, to keep you separate. You know, you're manipulatable there. Anyway, but just looking in tonight at the history of policing, this is missed completely. A word of caution in to the agenda in relation to encouraging people to become police commissioners. It will be a very difficult path because that position serves the stakeholder committees. That's what it does. It serves that committee, nothing else. Along with the mayor is how they implement the corporate agenda. So they're therefore then telling the police how to behave in the corporate system, which has put them into corporations that are out of the realm. Okay. And also missing, when I look through the history of it, is the term constables, constabularies. They keep pretending it were police forces. It wasn't. They were constabularies. Okay, that's what they were. That's what they should be. Okay, which is why there's laws against impersonating a police constable. All right, because it's important that nobody does. And the reason why they've kept the constabulary term out of the history of British policing is very simple. Because in order for that constabularies to justify their existence amongst the population, the public, as they use the term in here, there were certain things that they had to constantly show they were doing in order to keep their existence acceptable. We go to principle 5. Okay, there's 9 principles here. I'll put this at the bottom of the video, but I have made a video about this as well, but I think its timing might be now, basically. So what I'm saying is principle 5 is very clear. It says, gives the paradigm in which both a police constable and citizen of the realm can operate. The duties incumbent on a constable are also incumbent on all those within the realm, the citizens of the realm, because we're dealing with law. Okay, the system of 9 principles is set up in the common law. That's what it is. Okay, not policy, as you'll find out. So principle 5 is basically setting the paradigm in which law enforcement is carried out. So it's aimed specifically at the constables because, of course, these are being set up and they're being shoved in as acceptable. So it had to be set in this format so that the public would accept them. They could justify their existence. This is how, under Principle 5, the constabularies had to operate in order to justify their existence. Okay, if you moved off this in any way, shape, or form, they'd lost the justification. They'd lost the commission, basically. So the Principle 5 is very clear, and it's simple, but it's very, very... The context of it is huge. It says, to seek and to preserve public favour. So in other words, for the constabularies to seek and keep going public acceptance, they use the term favour. For the constabularies to exist, they didn't do that by pandering to public opinion, nor did they pander to policy. Now that's what government dishes out, policy. Okay, legislation, statutes, policy. It's policy. It's nothing to do with law. They use the term law now because everything that they're throwing at you, instead of serving you, is trying to they're taking your tax, you're funding them in the tax, they're giving it to their boyfriends and girlfriends in the corporations, the little charitable organisations that now run our entire civil system. So the police today is servicing the policy of the government, statutes, acts, etc. Principle 5, I'll read it to you now, exactly as it says. Okay. It It says to seek and to preserve public favour is to be not pandering to public opinion. So the police force is not allowed to take public opinion into consideration. But by constantly demonstrating absolutely impartial service to law. That's common law, okay? This is the realm. So for the constabularies to justify their existence, they had to constantly demonstrate absolutely, without question, impartial service to law. And then the last part of it is in complete independence of policy. So there you're being told that they have to service the law and nothing else, not public opinion, and not government policy, not stakeholder committee policy. The Chief Constable is responsible for upholding these 9 principles of law enforcement. Okay? What we need to do as the public is move this back to the Chief Constables and put them on notice that this is the only acceptable format if they are to be claim only, they only need to be claimed to be enforcing the law, because they're clearly not. They're pandering only to policy of government and the stakeholder committees. So the Chief Constables are in breach of Principle 5. And unless they want to be taken to task for treason, they need to put their constabularies right back on here, right back within the 9 principles of law enforcement. You'd have far more joy with that, because not only that, you're going to give the Chief Constable the power he has, which is to service, rather, law enforcement in each county. Okay, that's how it needs to be. The way that they've moved against all this in the last 100 years is to remove that from the Chief Constable, because he's dancing to the police commissioner, previous to that the police authority, etc., etc., and way back it goes. I mean, there were big changes after World War One. The police had union, and that wasn't acceptable, and that was bashed to pieces back then. So obviously, if the police had union then, that would have been because they were being encouraged to stand off the 9 principles of law enforcement. The fact that you can't find this anywhere except on my website, and previous to that the other websites, is a clear indication that this is the very thing they don't want anybody to look at. Because this is the remedy. Because the 9 principles are based entirely in the common law, the realm, the English Constitution, okay, the Australian Constitution, the New Zealand Constitution, the Canadian Constitution, and unless it's been removed at some point, it had to be also a part of the American Constitution when they took on our inalienable rights of the Englishman under our Constitution. So there we go. Again, this is the method I suggest we look at. Whether that means we elect as a public in our counties our Chief Constable, but on the basis that these are the only protocols upon which law enforcement, as decreed by the realm, are enforceable. That's all they should be doing. That's where we need to be looking. Because they're dismantling our police now. There's very few police left. Your riot police are mercenaries. Okay? Mercenaries. You've got to think about what's been going on in these wars since 9/11. They've took the cream of the crop, encouraged them to join private, and they're now being hired back at our cost. We're paying for it. Remember, we're paying for this policing. It's coming out of the tax. The occupation. This is what we're under, occupation. Occupation is clear. They cannot remove us from our law. Not policy, law. At the moment, everybody's dancing under policy. The police commissioners are there to ensure policy is enforced. The mayor is there to ensure policy is enforced. The stakeholder committee are the beneficiaries of that enforcement of policy over law. They're calling it law. They've been calling it law for a long time, which is why people believe it to be law. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, you can only use that term law because it's contract law. Because everything that's coming out of government and has been for long is a contract. It's not a service. They're there to service our needs as a nation, not there to tell us what to do, and that especially not entrap us in contracts. So they use the term law because it's contract law. But remember, the only thing contracted into this fiction is your fiction that you don't want to have. You don't want to have that. You don't want a surname. The surname is the trap. Okay? Which is why the man said, only in his name can you be saved. You can only move out of this system by operating on your Christian name, not a surname. Okay, that's what that means. The Bible is a book of law. That's what it is. It's a book of math. The religions have obfuscated that and screwed it up and interceded between you as a man, woman, understanding the laws has been set out for us to obey if we want the sight of the ultimate creator to be with us. You know, it doesn't work otherwise. Every time you breach them rules, you're out. You're moving out. Same for Muslims. Every time you're in breach of the Quran, you're breaching. You're coming out of the protection of your ancestors in the spiritual realm. That's how it works, people. So again, let me just put together why it's so important that what we do in England is reinforce the law as the only, because in the Quran it's clear. Muslims, when they're not in their own nation, have to abide by the laws of the nation. This is the law, not government policy. They don't know that. You don't even know that, or you didn't. Yeah, so we all have to give each other a little bit of a break here if we're going to move this grammar into people's minds so it becomes understood. Because if we reinstate the law of England, every Muslim in this country would have to obey that law, regardless of how uncomfortable it might be for the position they've got themselves in while they've been operating contrary to the Quran. But once we institute the law, they understand that that is law, not government policy, then all the Muslims here would have to obey that law. The kafir system is what's obeying the policy through fronts such as the Euro garages. Yeah, they're fronts for the policymakers, the banks, the Rothschilds. Okay. So this is how we can move this into some kind of sensible, yet while accepting where we are today, because we have to accept, as Adam puts out, we have to accept the territory as it is. It's all right having our map entrenched in one thing over here, whether that's our heritage, etc. We have to face the fact that the territory in which we all live is as it is. Okay, we have a huge amount of Muslims in this nation. Okay, stop dreaming that this can be sorted out some kind of militarily or by locking them up. Don't be ridiculous. You know, you sound like Tommy Robinson. No offence to you, Tommy. I know you're doing your best and what you believe in. But you're serving a foreign power that's undermining the West. Okay? I don't expect you to understand that, Tom, but that's what's happening when you start to understand the bigger picture, the historical context of the theology itself. That's where you're missing that, my good man. You're missing that. You need to accept that. Your idea is trying to give people the idea that this can be resolved in a violent, quick fix. That is ridiculous. The territory tells you different. Okay, if you're looking outside, it tells you that is not the case. So we have to work with the territory we have. Back to law, to the realm, making sure people know this, prevents the Muslims continuing to be supporting the kafir. Because when you breach the Quran, even one way, you're kafir. You know this. I don't have to tell you this. So it's as important to Muslims in this country to understand this grammar so that they can put themselves back within synchronicity with the book, okay, with the prophet. The only way that you can sort yourselves out here and not end up operating for the priesthood to your own demise, in the same way that English have to recognise what has been, where we are is where we are. These are the tools we need. Police commissioners, I have to say, Big Drag, it's not the way. Rethink that. You're a smart lad. Rethink that move. It's all about bringing back the chief constables into line, or voting our own in. And the only format they have, separate to government, separate to stakeholder committees, is this 9 principles of law enforcement, which I'll put at the bottom of this video. So with that, I will say, till the next time.